The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain of the Afghan mountains as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison crouched behind a boulder, scanning the valley below through his binoculars. The intel had been solid. A high-value target was meeting with local Taliban commanders in the compound nestled between two ridges. What the intelligence hadn't mentioned was the sheer number of hostiles surrounding the area. Morrison lowered his binoculars and turned to his team. 6 of the Navy's finest SEALs had inserted via helicopter 12 hours ago, moving through treacherous mountain paths under cover of darkness. Now, as dawn broke, they found themselves in a precarious position overlooking their objective. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Tank Rodriguez checked his rifle for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. At 6'4" and built like his nickname suggested, Tank was the team's heavy weapons specialist. Despite his intimidating appearance, he possessed a gentle demeanor that made him popular among locals during humanitarian missions. "Sir, I count at least 40 tangos down there," whispered Petty Officer Second Class David Shun, the team's communications expert. His eyes never left the spotting scope as he methodically cataloged enemy positions. "That's 4 times what we were briefed to expect." Morrison nodded grimly. The mission had been planned for a quick in-and-out operation against a lightly defended target. Instead, they were looking at what appeared to be a major Taliban gathering. The compound buzzed with activity as armed fighters moved between buildings, establishing defensive positions and conducting what looked like training exercises. "Options?" Morrison asked quietly, knowing his team well enough to trust their tactical assessment. Petty Officer First Class Sarah Chun, David's sister, and the team's medic, studied the terrain through her own scope. Sarah had earned her place on the team through exceptional marksmanship and medical skills, though she often faced skepticism from those who hadn't worked with her. At 5'6" with an unassuming build, many underestimated her capabilities until they witnessed her precision with both rifle and medical instruments. "We could call for extraction," she suggested, her voice steady despite the obvious danger. Intel was wrong. "This isn't the small meeting we planned for." Petty Officer Second Class Miguel Santos, the team's demolitions expert, shook his head. "Extract means losing the target. We've been hunting this guy for 6 months. He disappears again. Who knows when we'll get another shot?" The 6th member of the team, Chief Petty Officer James Ghost Williams, remained silent as he observed the compound. Ghost had earned his nickname through an uncanny ability to move unseen and unheard. His pale blue eyes missed nothing as he studied the enemy's patrol patterns and defensive setup. Morrison weighed their options carefully. The target, Ahmad Hassan, was a key figure in the Taliban's financing network. Eliminating him would severely disrupt operations across the region. But the current situation presented enormous risks with minimal chances of success using conventional assault tactics. "Sir," Ghost finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "There's something else. Northwest Ridge, about 800 meters. Morrison trained his binoculars in the indicated direction. Through the morning haze, he could make out what appeared to be an observation post. 2 figures moved around what looked like a heavy machine gun emplacement. Overwatch position, Tank confirmed, studying the ridge through his weapon's scope. "They've got the high ground and clear lines of fire on our approach routes." The tactical situation continued deteriorating as the team's assessment revealed the true scope of their challenge. The compound sat in a natural bowl surrounded by elevated positions. Any direct assault would be met with devastating crossfire from multiple directions. Sarah Chun adjusted her position slightly, using her rifle scope to examine the buildings more carefully. Her training as a sniper complemented her medical skills, though the team typically relied on Tank for long-range engagements due to his heavier weapon system. "Target building is the central structure," she observed. 2-story, reinforced construction. Multiple entry points, but all are covered by overlapping fields of fire. David Chun worked quietly with his communications equipment, trying to establish contact with headquarters. The mission's remote location and mountainous terrain made reliable communication challenging, but He persisted with a methodical patience that made him invaluable to the team. "Comms are spotty, sir," he reported. "I can try to reach headquarters, but it'll take time to establish a stable connection." Morrison considered their increasingly limited options. Protocol dictated calling for backup or extraction when facing such overwhelming odds. However, the intelligence value of the target and the rarity of such an opportunity weighed heavily on his mind. The compound below continued its steady stream of activity. Armed fighters moved with the confidence of those who believe themselves secure in their mountain stronghold. Their casual demeanor suggested they had no awareness of the SEAL team's presence, which provided one small tactical advantage. Ghost shifted position, moving with the fluid grace that had kept him alive through countless missions. "Sir, patrol patterns suggest they rotate guards every 2 hours. Next change should be in 40 minutes. Windows of opportunity?" Morrison asked. "Brief," Ghost replied. "Maybe 90 seconds of confusion during the handoff. But with those overwatch positions active, it won't matter much." Tank studied the distant ridgeline again, calculating ranges and wind conditions. "I could take out the machine gun nest, but the shot would compromise our position immediately." Santos examined the terrain between their position and the compound, noting potential routes and obstacles. Multiple approach vectors, but all funnel into kill zones. They've positioned themselves well. The team fell into contemplative silence as each member processed the tactical challenges. Years of training and combat experience had taught them to thoroughly analyze every aspect of a situation before committing to action. Sarah Chun continued her detailed observation of the compound, noting the movement patterns of individual fighters and identifying potential key personnel. Her medical training had taught her to notice subtle details that others might miss: posture, gait, and behavior that could indicate rank or importance. "Target confirmation," she announced quietly. "Central building, second floor window. Male, approximately 40 years old, distinctive beard pattern matching our photos." Morrison moved to verify the sighting. Through his binoculars, he could see a figure that matched their target's description, speaking with several other men in what appeared to be an animated discussion. "Positive identification," he confirmed. "Ahmad Hassan, primary target." The confirmation added urgency to their decision-making process. Having located their primary objective, the team faced the challenge of completing their mission against overwhelming odds. David Chun finally established a weak connection with headquarters, speaking in low, coded phrases to avoid potential interception. The conversation was brief and frequently interrupted by static, but he managed to convey their situation and request guidance. "Headquarters acknowledges our position," he reported. "No immediate backup available. Nearest support is 6 hours out." Morrison absorbed this information with the calm professionalism that had earned him command of the elite unit. 6 hours might as well be 6 days, given their current tactical situation. "Team assessment?" he asked, giving each member an opportunity to voice their opinion. Tank spoke first. "High risk, low probability mission with current parameters. Recommend we establish overwatch and wait for better conditions." Santos desagreed. "Every hour we wait increases the chance of detection or target departure. We need to act while we still have surprise." Ghost remained pragmatic. "Current approach routes are suicide. Need to find an alternative or create our own opportunity." David Chun focused on their communication challenges. "Limited coordination capability with current equipment and terrain. Whatever we do needs to be simple and self-contained." Sarah Chun had been quiet during the discussion, but Morrison noticed her continued focus on the compound below. Her concentration suggested she was developing an idea that required careful consideration. "Sarah," he prompted. She lowered her rifle and turned to face the team. "Long-range engagement might be possible from the eastern ridge. Different angle, better concealment, outside their prepared defensive perimeter." Morrison studied the ridge she indicated. It was significantly farther from the compound, but offered an elevated position with clear sight lines to the target building. "Range?" he asked. Sarah calculated quickly. approximately 1,200 meters. Challenging, but within capability parameters. Tank frowned. That's an extremely difficult shot, especially with potential wind variables at that distance. Agreed, Sarah replied calmly. But it's outside their defensive planning. They've prepared for close assault, not long-range precision engagement. The discussion highlighted the fundamental challenge facing the team. Traditional SEAL tactics emphasized close combat and coordinated team action. However, their current situation demanded adaptation and innovative thinking. Ghost studied the proposed position carefully. Approach route to that ridge is exposed for approximately 300 meters. High risk of detection during movement. Alternative is remaining here until extraction, Morrison observed, which means mission failure and losing the target indefinitely. Santos examined the compound's layout again. If we can eliminate key personnel from long range, it might create enough confusion to either complete the mission or facilitate extraction. The team continued analyzing their options as the morning progressed. Each passing minute brought new risks as increased activity in the compound suggested potential departure preparations. Sarah Chun had been studying the wind patterns and terrain features that would affect a long-range shot. Her training as a designated marksman, combined with her medical background's emphasis on precision, gave her unique insights into the technical challenges involved. Shot is feasible, she concluded after careful analysis. Wind conditions are stable, visibility is good, and the target position offers clear engagement opportunity. Morrison weighed the risks against potential rewards. The mission's importance couldn't be understated, but he also bore responsibility for his team's safety. The decision required balancing tactical necessity with acceptable risk levels. Tank checked his equipment again, ensuring everything was properly secured for potential movement. Despite his reservations about the long-range engagement plan, he trusted his teammates and prepared to support whatever course of action the commander chose. David Chin monitored communication channels, hoping for updated intelligence or changed circumstances that might affect their decision. The static-filled transmissions provided little additional information, leaving the team to rely on their own assessment and judgment. The sun climbed higher, gradually eliminating the shadows that had provided concealment during their initial observation period. This natural progression added time pressure to their deliberations, as continued daylight would make detection increasingly likely. Ghost had been studying the compound's activity patterns, noting that several groups of fighters appeared to be preparing equipment for departure. This observation suggested their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. "Sir," he reported quietly, "increased activity suggests possible departure preparations. Estimate we have 2 hours maximum before potential target movement." Morrison nodded, understanding the implications. Any delay beyond that time frame would likely result in mission failure regardless of their tactical choices. The weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders as he considered the lives of his teammates against the strategic importance of their objective. Years of training and experience had prepared him for such moments, but the responsibility never became easier to bear. Sarah Chun continued her preparations, checking and rechecking her equipment with the methodical precision that characterized her approach to every task. Her confidence in the proposed long-range engagement option remained steady despite the obvious challenges and risks involved. "Team ready for movement on your command, sir," she reported, speaking for the group that had already begun subtle preparations for whichever course of action their leader chose. Morrison took one final look at the compound below, noting the continued presence of their primary target and the ongoing activity that suggested imminent departure. The decision could no longer be delayed without forfeiting their mission entirely. The next few hours would test every aspect of their training, teamwork, and individual capabilities. Success would require perfect execution under extreme pressure, while failure could cost not only their lives, but also countless future casualties from continued enemy operations. With the weight of command and the trust of his team resting squarely on his shoulders, Morrison prepared to make the decision that would determine their fate and the outcome of months of planning and intelligence gathering. "We moved to the eastern ridge," Morrison decided, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had guided his team through countless dangerous missions. "Sarah takes the shot. Rest of us provide security and extraction support." The team exchanged glances, each member understanding the risks inherent in the plan. Tank looked skeptical about the long-range engagement, but nodded his acceptance of the decision. Ghost immediately began planning their movement route, while Santos checked his demolitions equipment in case they needed to create diversions. David Chun worked to establish one final communication with headquarters, wanting to inform them of the team's intended course of action. The crackling radio offered only fragments of transmission, but he managed to convey their basic plan before the connection failed entirely. "Moving in 15 minutes, Morrison announced. "Light and fast. Sarah, you'll need your precision rifle and minimal kit. Everyone else, essential gear only." The team began their preparations with the efficient choreography of professionals who had worked together for years. Each member understood their role without requiring detailed instructions, stripping their equipment down to mission-essential items. Sarah Chun carefully inspected her State Route 25 precision rifle, checking the scope alignment and ensuring her ammunition was properly seated. The weapon represented years of training and countless hours on various ranges, becoming an extension of her will and intent. Tank secured his heavier equipment, retaining only his M4 carbine and basic ammunition load. Leaving his squad automatic weapon behind felt uncomfortable, but the mission parameters demanded speed and stealth over firepower. Ghost shed unnecessary gear with practiced efficiency, keeping only his rifle, sidearm, and specialized equipment for silent movement. His loadout reflected his role as the team's reconnaissance specialist and primary scout. Santos organized his demolitions equipment, selecting items that could serve dual purposes for both mission execution and emergency extraction. His expertise extended beyond simple explosives to include improvised devices and tactical applications. David Chin secured his communication equipment in a compact configuration that would allow movement while maintaining the capability to re-establish contact when conditions permitted. His gear represented their lifeline to outside support and coordination. Morrison completed his own preparations while mentally rehearsing the movement plan and potential contingencies. Leadership required him to think several steps ahead, anticipating problems and developing solutions before they became critical issues. Movement formation, he instructed quietly. Ghost leads, Sarah follows, I'm center, Santos, and Tank bring up the rear. David maintains communication watch throughout. The team formed up in their designated order, each member checking their neighbor's equipment for any items that might create noise or catch on obstacles during movement. This final inspection was both practical necessity and psychological comfort, reinforcing their interdependence and mutual trust. Ghost led them away from their observation position, following a carefully planned route that utilized natural terrain features for concealment. His movement was fluid and silent, setting the pace for the team as they navigated through rocky outcroppings and sparse vegetation. The eastern ridge lay approximately 2 kilometers from their starting position, requiring careful navigation through terrain that offered little cover from observation. Ghost selected a path that minimized their exposure while avoiding areas that might contain improvised explosive devices or other hazards. Sarah Chun moved with the focused concentration of someone balancing speed with the need to protect sensitive equipment. Her rifle, while lighter than Tank's heavy weapons, still required careful handling to maintain the precise calibration essential for long-range accuracy. Morrison monitored their progress while simultaneously maintaining awareness of the compound below. The distance gradually increased their safety from detection, but also reduced their ability to observe target activities and respond to changing conditions. Santos and Tank provided rear security, periodically stopping to ensure they weren't being followed or observed. Their position allowed them to watch for signs of enemy patrols or local civilians who might compromise their movement. David Chun worked continuously to re-establish communication with headquarters, hoping to provide updates on their position and receive any new intelligence about the target situation. His efforts remained unsuccessful as the mountainous terrain continued to block radio transmissions. The movement required nearly 2 hours of careful navigation through increasingly rugged terrain. Ghost led them around natural obstacles and potential ambush sites, adding distance to their route, but significantly reducing the risk of detection or engagement. As they approached the eastern ridge, the team's pace slowed further to allow careful reconnaissance of their intended firing position. Ghost moved ahead to scout the area while the others waited in concealment, ready to react if he encountered opposition. The ridge offered excellent elevation and clear sight lines to the compound, but also presented challenges in terms of approach and escape routes. The position was naturally defensible, but could become a trap if enemy forces discover their location. Ghost signaled the all-clear after completing his reconnaissance, indicating that the ridge was unoccupied and suitable for their purposes. The team moved forward in a tight formation, reaching their intended position without incident. Sarah Chun immediately began establishing her firing position, using natural terrain features to create stable support for her rifle while maintaining concealment from potential observation. Her movements were deliberate and methodical, reflecting her understanding of the precision required for the upcoming shot. Tank and Santos established security positions covering the likely approach routes to their location, while Morrison and David Shin focused on target observation and communication attempts. The team's positioning reflected their training in small unit tactics and mutual support. Through her rifle scope, Sarah could clearly observe the compound despite the increased distance. The magnification revealed details that had been invisible from their original position, including individual faces and specific activities within the target building. "Target still in position," she reported quietly. "Clear shot available, but I need to account for wind and elevation changes at this range." Morrison studied the compound through his binoculars, noting that the activity level had increased significantly since their movement began. Several vehicles had arrived, and armed fighters were loading equipment in what appeared to be departure preparations. "Time factor becoming critical," he observed. "How long do you need for shot preparation?" Sarah was already making calculations based on range, wind conditions, and atmospheric factors that would affect bullet trajectory. Her training had covered such extreme range engagements, but the practical application required careful consideration of multiple variables. 10 minutes for final preparation and wind reading," she replied. "Shot opportunity depends on target positioning and movement patterns." Ghost continued monitoring their security perimeter while Tank and Santos maintained their defensive positions. The team's dispersed formation provided overlapping fields of fire while allowing each member to focus on their specific responsibilities. David Chun finally achieved a brief communication window, managing to transmit their current position and status before the connection failed again. The information would be valuable for extraction planning and potential backup support, even though immediate assistance remained unavailable. The compound below showed increasing signs of imminent departure as more vehicles arrived, and personnel began moving equipment outside the buildings. This activity created both opportunities and challenges for the planned engagement, as increased movement made target identification easier, but also reduced the time available for careful shot preparation. Sarah completed her range calculations and began the precise adjustment of her rifle's scope to account for the extreme distance and environmental conditions. Each click of the elevation and windage adjustments brought the weapon closer to perfect alignment for the challenging shot. "Range confirmed at 1,180 meters," she announced. "Wind speed approximately 8 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature and humidity are within acceptable parameters." Morrison monitored the target building through his binoculars, noting that Ahmad Hassan remained visible through the second-floor window where they had initially spotted him. The target appeared engaged in heated discussion with several other individuals, providing a stationary target for the upcoming engagement. Tanks studied the compound's defensive positions, noting that several heavy weapons emplacements had become active as the departure preparations continued. The increased activity suggested heightened alertness among the enemy forces, potentially complicating their extraction after the shot. Santos identified several potential routes for emergency withdrawal from their current position, noting that the eastern ridge offered limited options for rapid departure. His demolitions expertise suggested several ways to create diversions or obstacles to delay pursuit, but such measures would only provide temporary advantages. The tactical situation continued evolving as Sarah completed her final preparations for the shot. The combination of extreme range, time pressure, and complex environmental factors created one of the most challenging engagements any of them had ever attempted. Ghost reported movement on the northern approach to their position, indicating potential enemy patrol activity in their general area. The sighting created additional urgency for completing their mission and beginning withdrawal before their location could be discovered and surrounded. Contact possible in 30 minutes, Ghost warned. Small patrol, approximately 4 individuals, moving in our general direction. Morrison weighed the competing time factors affecting their mission. Sarah needed time for the precise shot preparation required at such extreme range, but approaching enemy forces threatened to compromise their position before the engagement could be completed. "Sarah, status?" he asked quietly. 2 minutes for final wind reading and target confirmation, she replied, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. "Shot will be ready within acceptable parameters." The team maintained their positions while Sarah completed her preparations, each member ready to react instantly to changing circumstances. Years of training and combat experience had taught them the importance of patience and discipline under pressure. Through her scope, Sarah could see Ahmad Hassan clearly as he continued his discussion with other Taliban commanders. The target remained stationary enough for the shot, though she would need to time her engagement carefully to account for any movement during the bullet's flight time. David Chin monitored radio frequencies for any signs of enemy communication that might indicate their discovery or changing tactical situation. His linguistic training allowed him to understand basic Pashto and Arabic transmissions, providing early warning of potential threats. Tank and Santos maintained their security positions while monitoring the approach of the enemy patrol Ghost had identified. The hostile forces appear to be conducting a routine sweep rather than actively searching for the SEAL team, but their presence still posed significant risks. Morrison made final preparations for immediate withdrawal once Sarah took her shot, knowing that their position would be compromised within seconds of the rifle firing. The sound and muzzle flash would reveal their location to any nearby enemy forces, making rapid departure essential for survival. The moment of truth approached as all factors aligned for the critical shot that would determine the mission's success or failure. Sarah's breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm taught in sniper training, her focus narrowing to the precise sight picture through her rifle scope. "Ready," she announced quietly, her finger finding the familiar curve of the trigger as she prepared to engage a target at one of the most challenging ranges any of them had ever attempted. The next few seconds would test years of training, teamwork, and individual skill as the team balanced precision requirements against mounting time pressure and approaching enemy forces. Success would validate their bold tactical decision, while failure could cost them both mission completion and their lives in the hostile mountain terrain. Sarah Chen's world narrowed to the small circle of magnified view through her rifle scope. Ahmad Hassan stood clearly visible in the second-floor window, gesturing emphatically as he spoke with 3 other men. The crosshairs settled on center mass, accounting for the slight wind drift and bullet drop over the extreme range. Her breathing became deliberate and controlled, following the rhythm drilled into her through thousands of practice rounds. The noise of approaching enemy patrol faded from her awareness as complete focus took over. This was the moment that would define the mission's success or failure. Wind steady, target stationary, she whispered, more to herself than to the team. Her finger applied gradual pressure to the trigger, following the careful squeeze technique that ensured accuracy at such distances. The rifle's report echoed across the mountains like thunder, immediately followed by the distinctive crack of the bullet breaking the sound barrier. Sarah maintained her sight picture through the recoil, watching as the projectile traveled the 1,200 meters to its target in just over 1 second. The impact was devastating and immediate. Ahmad Hassan collapsed instantly, the high-velocity round striking exactly where Sarah had aimed. The other men in the room reacted with shock and confusion, dropping to the floor and scrambling away from the windows. "Target down," Sarah confirmed, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she had just accomplished. "Clean hit. Target is neutralized." Morrison watched through his binoculars as chaos erupted throughout the compound. Armed fighters ran in all directions, shouting orders and seeking cover from an unseen enemy they couldn't locate. The confusion bought the team precious time for their withdrawal. "Outstanding shot," Morrison said simply, but the pride in his voice was unmistakable. "Now we move. Ghost, lead us out." The team began their withdrawal immediately, knowing that enemy forces would soon organize search parties to locate the source of the shot. Ghost led them along a predetermined route that offered concealment while putting distance between their position and approaching hostile forces. Tank and Santos provided rear guard security as they moved, ready to engage any pursuit while the team made their escape. The successful elimination of their primary target had completed their mission objective, but survival now depended on reaching their extraction point without detection. David Chun worked frantically to re-establish communication with headquarters, needing to confirm mission completion and coordinate extraction procedures. The mountainous terrain continued to interfere with radio transmissions, but he persisted with the determination that characterized his approach to every challenge. Sarah secured her rifle and moved with the controlled urgency of someone who understood that speed was now more important than stealth. Her successful shot had proven her capabilities beyond any doubt, but the team's survival still required collective effort and mutual support. The enemy patrol Ghost had identified earlier was now searching actively for the source of the gunshot, their movements becoming more aggressive and coordinated as they received radio instruction from the compound below. The SEAL team needed to avoid contact while maintaining their withdrawal pace. Morrison monitored their progress while simultaneously tracking enemy movement patterns visible from their elevated position. The Taliban forces were organizing search teams and establishing checkpoints on likely escape routes, but their efforts remained reactive rather than predictive. Ghost's navigation skills proved invaluable as he led the team through terrain that offered concealment while avoiding areas where enemy forces might establish ambush positions. His intimate understanding of mountain warfare kept them ahead of their pursuers while maintaining their heading toward the extraction point. The withdrawal required 3 hours of careful movement through increasingly dangerous territory as enemy search efforts expanded and intensified. Taliban forces had mobilized significant resources to hunt for the sniper team, understanding the strategic importance of the target they had just lost. Tank's physical strength became crucial as the team navigated steep terrain while maintaining their rapid pace. His ability to assist teammates over difficult obstacles while carrying his full combat load demonstrated the value of his presence despite earlier reservations about the long-range engagement plan. Santos used his demolitions expertise to create false trails and minor obstacles that would delay pursuit without causing casualties that might escalate enemy response. His understanding of tactical deception helped maintain their lead while conserving energy for the continued withdrawal. David Chen finally achieved stable communication with headquarters as they reached higher ground with better radio propagation. His report of mission success and current situation initiated extraction procedures that would bring helicopter support to their designated pickup point. "Extraction confirmed for 1900 hours," he reported to Morrison. Landing Zone Alpha, approximately 4 kilometers from current position. The team had 6 hours to reach their extraction point while avoiding an increasingly organized enemy search effort. Taliban forces had established roadblocks and patrol bases throughout the region, turning their withdrawal into a complex game of movement and concealment. Sarah's successful shot had eliminated a key figure in the Taliban's financial network, but the enemy response demonstrated the target's importance and their determination to find his killers. Radio intercepts indicated that significant rewards had been offered for information leading to the sniper team's capture. Morrison led the team through a series of tactical decisions that balanced speed against concealment, choosing routes that avoided known enemy positions while maintaining progress toward their extraction point. His leadership during the withdrawal proved as crucial as his decision-making during the engagement phase. Ghost's reconnaissance skills identified several potential ambush sites along their route, allowing the team to either avoid or carefully navigate through areas where enemy forces might be waiting. His ability to read terrain and predict enemy thinking kept them ahead of their pursuers throughout the withdrawal. The afternoon brought increased enemy air activity as Taliban forces employed helicopters and small aircraft to search for the SEAL team. This development added a new dimension to their concealment requirements, forcing them to seek cover that would hide them from both ground and aerial observation. Tank's training in air defense helped the team recognize approaching aircraft early enough to seek appropriate cover. His knowledge of enemy capabilities and limitations allowed them to time their movements to avoid detection from overhead surveillance. Santos identified several caves and rocky overhangs that provided shelter from aerial observation while allowing continued progress toward their objective. His understanding of terrain features and their tactical applications proved valuable in adapting their movement plan to changing circumstances. The team's water and food supplies began running low as the extended operation stretched beyond their original planning parameters. David Chun rationed their remaining resources while monitoring weather conditions that might affect their extraction helicopter's ability to reach the pickup point. Sarah's confidence had grown throughout the withdrawal as her teammates' acceptance of her capabilities became evident in their actions and decisions. Tank, who had initially questioned the long-range shot, now deferred to her tactical judgment on matters requiring precision and careful calculation. Morrison observed the team dynamics with satisfaction, noting how the successful mission had strengthened their cohesion and mutual trust. The combination of individual expertise and collective teamwork had overcome seemingly impossible odds through careful planning and flawless execution. As they approached the final phase of their withdrawal, Ghost identified enemy positions that threatened their access to the extraction point. Taliban forces had correctly anticipated that any infiltrating team would need to reach high ground for helicopter pickup, establishing checkpoints and patrol bases around suitable landing zones. Multiple hostiles between us and LZ Alpha, Ghost reported after completing his reconnaissance. Estimate squad-sized element with crew-served weapons. Morrison studied the tactical situation through his binoculars, noting that enemy forces had positioned themselves to cover the most obvious approach routes to their intended extraction point. The Taliban's defensive setup demonstrated tactical competence that would make direct assault extremely costly. Tank assessed the enemy positions from a heavy weapons perspective, calculating fields of fire and dead zones that might allow infiltration or flanking maneuvers. His analysis suggested that conventional assault tactics would face devastating crossfire from multiple prepared positions. Santos examined the terrain for opportunities to create diversions or obstacles that might allow the team to bypass enemy positions without direct engagement. His demolitions expertise offered several possibilities for misdirection and tactical deception. David Chun maintained communication with the extraction helicopter, coordinating timing and alternate landing sites in case their primary objective proved unavailable. His coordination efforts provided flexibility in their extraction planning, while keeping support forces informed of changing circumstances. Sarah studied the enemy positions through her rifle scope, noting individual soldiers and their equipment while calculating engagement ranges and shot opportunities. Her successful long-range engagement had established her credibility as the team's precision marksman, and her assessment would heavily influence their tactical decisions. "I can engage key personnel from our current position," she reported after completing her analysis. "Range is 600 meters, well within capability. Eliminating the heavy weapons crews would reduce their defensive effectiveness significantly." Morrison considered their options carefully, weighing the risks of engagement against the likelihood of successful extraction. The team had already accomplished their primary mission, but reaching safety required overcoming this final obstacle. "Time to extraction?" he asked David Chun. 45 minutes to helicopter arrival," David replied. "Pilot reports weather conditions are acceptable and no enemy air activity in the immediate area." The tactical decision required balancing immediate risks against long-term consequences. Engaging enemy positions would reveal their location, but might create opportunities for successful extraction. Attempting to bypass hostile forces risked being trapped in unfavorable terrain when the helicopter arrived. Ghost Reconnaissance had identified a potential flanking route that might allow them to approach the landing zone from an unexpected direction. However, the path would require additional time and expose them to potential detection by roving patrols. Tank volunteered to create a diversion that would draw enemy attention away from their intended approach route. His plan involved using his automatic weapon to simulate a larger force attacking from a different direction, but would require him to separate from the team temporarily. Santos proposed using his remaining explosives to create confusion and destroy enemy equipment without causing unnecessary casualties. His approach would allow precise targeting of key defensive positions while maintaining the team's moral standards regarding civilian protection. Morrison synthesized these suggestions into a coordinated plan that utilized each team member's strengths while minimizing individual risks. The operation would require perfect timing and coordination, but offered their best chance for successful extraction. "Sarah eliminates the heavy weapons crews with precision fire," he decided. "Santos creates diversions with explosives. Tank provides suppressive fire to cover our movement. Ghost leads us to the extraction point. David coordinates with helicopter support." The team prepared for their final engagement with the same professional competence they had demonstrated throughout the mission. Each member understood their role and trusted their teammates to execute their responsibilities flawlessly. Sarah settled into her final firing position, calculating wind conditions and range to target as she prepared to engage multiple enemies in rapid succession. Her confidence in her abilities had grown throughout the mission, supported by her teammates' trust and her own proven performance. The extraction phase would test every aspect of their training and teamwork as they fought to reach safety after completing one of the most challenging missions any of them had ever attempted. Success would validate their tactical innovations and individual capabilities, while failure could cost them their lives despite having already achieved their strategic objective. As the helicopter's distant rotors became audible in the mountain air, Sarah took aim at the first target, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether they would return home as heroes or become casualties of their own success.